Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are we ready to start?
We are ready to start. We are, but one thing is your name is not Tina.
Oh, I know. I have to keep changing that. Thank you. I work with Tina, and for some reason, I don't know, it keeps popping up on my computer, her name. So anyway, does that look better?
Yeah.
Yeah, Tina doesn't have as pretty hair as I do.
I didn't even notice that, so thank you.
Better be a Tina than a Jones. All right.
Okay, I'm going to let Commissioner, I'll call the meeting to order. I'm going to let Commissioner Jones moderate this public hearing and the subsequent and the following.
Purpose of the public hearing is to receive public comment on consideration of the closeout of Blue Ridge School Water Wastewater Project CDBG 1 I grant. And there is nobody has signed up yet. Mr. Poston.
Thank you. And as we discussed when we called for the public hearing, when you close out a CDBG grant, they do have some procedures that they want you to go through one of these closeout items. So I'll be reading the report that Angie handed out to you word for word to put it into the record for the minutes, which will be required documentation for the state. I'll try to get through it in a quick and efficient manner. The Blue Ridge, this is for grant numbers CDBG-I 09D2945, 11I 3151, and 13I 3150, and for the Blue Ridge School Water and Wastewater Project. The Blue Ridge School Water and Wastewater Project made improvements to the Blue Ridge School's water and wastewater systems. The water portion of the project consisted of modernizing the water system by replacing a 43-year-old 10,000-gallon elevated tank with a 5,000-gallon ground level storage and a booster pump. The sewer portion of the project consists of modernizing the school's 40-year-old sanitary sewer system and terracotta lines by replacing the existing 10,000-gallon a day system with a new 10,000-gallon per day system and replacing the terracotta lines with new PVC sewer lines. The scope was refined when the county was awarded additional funding in separate grant years and split the cost of the project between those additional grants. The following is a breakdown by grant of the project items that were addressed with each of the grant funded sources. For grant 09D2945, wastewater related expenses included the packaged sewer plant, grading, electrical, primary trash tank, manhole covers, the 2-inch and 4-inch sewer lines, stone and fabric drains, all the valves and fittings, and etc., and the seeding and erosion control measures. For the water-related expenses, they included the mobilization costs, the erosion control and site grading, and access road construction costs, the building itself, the 3,000-gallon tanks and the bladder tanks, the slab foundation, slab and footing, piping and pumps, and electrical work. The grant total was $1 million for 09D2945. $728,158 went for the sewer improvements. $271,842 went to the water improvements. For grant 11I3151, water related, it was only water related expenses. It was the demolition of the elevated tank, the final gravel drive and walkway surfaces, and concrete stoops for the project. The grand total of that grant was $94,942, and that all went to water improvements. For grant number 13I3150, the wastewater related expenses included the demolition of the sewer plant, the plant fencing, grease trap, generator and slab, finished gravel surfaces, and portable buildings. The water related expenses included water system generator and slab, the tie-in fittings and valves, etc., and the fencing for the water system. The grand total of that grant was $193,765, with $108,500 for sewer improvements and $85,265 for water system improvements. The scope during the project was amended with 3 approved change orders, and the following are a summary of those change orders. To the grant 09D2945, during the excavation process, an unknown 18-inch diameter corrugated storm drain pipe was uncovered in the area of the wastewater treatment plant. That was an unexpected find. The change order replaced and rerouted the storm drainage system and added $35,000 to the contracted price. The cost included the required 3 drain boxes with grates and manhole covers, new drainage pipe, and the installation costs necessary to reroute the storm drain system. The second change order was to grant 13I3150. This change order replaced the interior waste plumbing from all the sinks and automatic dishwashers in the school's kitchen to the new grease trap exterior plumbing. The change order added $7,273.25 to the contract price. The cost included the plumbing materials and work, as well as removing and repairing the exterior sidewalk to make that connection. The third change order was again to grant 09D2945. This change order adjusted the allowance quantities with unit pricing in the contract. This happened at the end of the process of the project. This change order resulted in a deduction in the contract due to the price of the excavation and needed stone and soil backfill materials being less than expected for both the water and wastewater systems. The total deduction in the contract between the 2 systems was $6,534.60. The final contract after the 3 change orders was $1,315,738.65. The total local government expenditures was $68,400. The Blue Ridge School Water and Wastewater Project objective was to replace the existing aged water and wastewater systems at the schools with new systems. This was accomplished with the construction of a new water and wastewater system and the demolition of the old systems. This project assisted a total of 1,320 people. 887 of them are considered low to moderate income, which represents 67.19% of the people served. Commissioners, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them, but that concludes my report on this project.
Any questions? And if nobody signed up, we'll recess this public hearing. Motion to adjourn the public hearing.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, aye.
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 Do you want to have just a moment?
Yes, please.
We've got to get our September 21st meeting minutes together. Just a moment. Thank you.
We're good.
All right, our second public hearing is, the purpose of the public hearing is to receive public comment on consideration of the FY 23 Community Transportation Program application for capital project program grants. Motion to go into public hearing. Second,
Second,
all in favor, aye? Aye. Ms. Taylor, thank you.
Thank you. I have my Title VI public involvement forms. If anyone wants to fill one of those out, it's voluntary. These community transportation program grants are made available to assist with the administrating and operating cost of the public transportation system. And for FY 23, the 5311 program grant supports administrative costs, the salaries and fringes for the director, assistant director, office supplies, at drug and alcohol tests, uniforms, marketing, telephone, fax, internet, training, and it totals $192,581, with the local share being $28,887. The 5310 Elderly and Disabled Program Grant supports the cost for elderly and disabled transportation. Those were requested in FY 23, $175,000 total funding request, and $87,500 of that is the 50% local match, and contracts are used to cover that match.
Any questions for Ms. Taylor?
So, Ms. Taylor, is this your last public hearing?
This is my last public hearing.
Well, I want to say thank you and appreciate everything you've done. And we'll have more conversations, but just wanted to recognize Ms.
Yes.
Taylor's been coming before this board multiple years,
yes.
working on these types of grants and public hearings, and just want to recognize you and appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate all the support we've received over the years from the commissioners, from the county manager, the finance office, and all of the other agencies that help us move the people of Jackson County.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I especially want to mention how you have adjusted to COVID and worked so hard to keep our citizens safe
Well, thank you.
and moving. Thank you.
Thank you.
We entertain a motion to come out of public hearing.
So moved.
Second, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Hey, Commissioner Jones,
Yes, sir.
could you give me a call before we start the regular meeting?
Yes, sir. the first thing on order is the proclamation recognizing Fire Prevention Week. And I think Commissioner Stribley is going to read that proclamation for us.
Okay. Fire Prevention Week, October 3rd to 9th. Whereas Jackson County is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all of those living in and visiting our county. And whereas fire is a serious public safety concern, both locally and nationally, and homes are the locations where people are at greatest risk from fire. And whereas home fires killed more than 2,770 people in the United States in 2019, according to the National Fire Protection Association. And the fire departments in the United States responded to 339,500 home fires. And whereas smoke alarms sense smoke well before you can, alerting you to danger in the event of a fire in which you may have as little as 2 minutes to escape safely. And whereas working smoke alarms cut the risk of dying in reported home fires in half. And whereas Jackson County residents should be sure everyone in the home understands the sound of the alarms and knows how to respond. And whereas Jackson County residents who have planned and practiced a home fire escape plan are more prepared and will therefore be more likely to survive a fire. And whereas Jackson County residents should ensure their smoke and carbon monoxide alarms meet the needs of all their family members. And whereas Jackson County first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education. And whereas Jackson County residents are responsive to public education measures and are better able to take personal steps to increase their safety from fire, especially in their homes. And whereas the 2021 Fire Prevention Week theme, learn the sounds of learn the sounds of fire safety, effectively serves to remind us it is important to learn the different sounds of smoke and carbon monoxide alarms. Therefore, the Jackson County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim October 3rd through 9th, 2021 as Fire Prevention Week throughout this county. We urge all the people of Jackson County to learn the sounds of fire safety for Fire Prevention Week 2021 and to support the many public safety activities and efforts in Jackson County's fire and emergency services. Adopted this 21st day of September 2021.
We have a proclamation before us. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Approval of our agenda.
I would like to make an amendment to the agenda. I would like to add comments by Principal Chief Richard Sneed from the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians to the beginning of our agenda.
And we'll make that 1 and the finance report 1A. Chief Sneed, it's an honor to have you with us, please. Step on the development this second.
Waiting for a move, second in the vote. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here with you today. It's an honor. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I joined in on the singing. My part. I'm here before you today to speak very briefly on a resolution that was passed by the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians Tribal Council, October 29th, 2020, resolution number 324. I think everybody's familiar, but I'll just give a little bit of a background. The resolution itself speaks to the name of Jackson County being named after former President Andrew Jackson, President of the United States from 1829 to 1837. And the fourth whereas that President Jackson was the architect and chief proponent of the Indian Removal Act of 1830, which authorized the removal in 1838 of Cherokee and other Indians from the area, including Jackson County, to the Indian Territory of Oklahoma, along what is now known as the Trail of Tears. For many Cherokees, the Trail of Tears was a forced march of approximately 1,200 miles. Most everyone had to walk. Food, shelter, and clothing were scarce. Several thousand Cherokees died from exposure, disease, and starvation while en route to Indian Territory in Oklahoma. President Jackson argued to Congress that the Indian Removal Act was an expression of the government's benevolence to the Indian residents of the area. He said it would free the Indians from troublesome encounters with white settlers. In reality, it was a racist policy of dominance and imperialism by which the United States took land and expanded the economy of southern states so they could flourish. President Jackson, who saw Native Americans as inferior, who said of the Cherokee that, quote, they must disappear so that his superior race could dominate. Before the removal, Cherokee Aboriginal territory included all of western North Carolina, including what is now Jackson County. And also, for the record, Cherokee territory covered an area in 7 states: North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, Kentucky, Alabama, Georgia, and parts of South Carolina. Today, the Eastern Cherokee Indians is the single largest employer in Jackson County and of Jackson County residents through the Harris Cherokee Casino Resort. And also, as a result of our casino property in Cherokee County, we're the largest single employer west of Asheville, employing over 6,000 people. Further, as a result of our casino enterprises, the county receives grants from the Cherokee Preservation Foundation, demonstrating that Cherokee is a good neighbor to Jackson County. One of our journalists, Scott McKee, suggested the idea of changing the name associated with Jackson County from Andrew Jackson to EBC tribal member and Principal Chief Walter Jackson. I'd just like to offer some background on Chief Walter Jackson. He was born May 29th, 1923. He died on April 26, 1971 at the age of 47. He died in office. For some more background on that, he actually had heart surgery and died as a result of an infection from the surgery. He was a World War II Navy veteran. He was the manager of the Oconaluftee Indian Village. He was the chief of the Cherokee Indian Police Department. He was the head of the Tribes Community Service Division. He was a council member for 12 years, vice chief for 4 years, and principal chief, elected in 1967, which happened to be the year I was born, and he happened to be my step-grandfather as well. So I have some pictures of him holding me, which is kind of interesting because it was kind of prophetic, the chief holding the future chief. So I have no memory of him, but I just have pictures. He played an instrumental role in developing the Cherokee Boys Club, improving reservation roads, reopening tribal roles, securing a new elementary school, and establishing the Public Health Service Hospital in Cherokee. With that, the Council of the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians passed this resolution, and then I'm tasked with coming before you and asking for the county's support of this resolution and whatever measures would need to be taken by the county or the commissioners to honor and carry out such a resolution. I'll entertain any questions at this time.
Go ahead.
Well, I would just like to make a comment, Chief Sneed. The historic land of the Cherokee Nation makes up what we now call Jackson County. But the Cherokee had no input in this decision in 1851 of what to call this new county, which was part of historic Cherokee land. So much of the history of the Cherokee people involves others making decisions for the Cherokee, forcing other people's choices on them. I feel that it is only just and right to honor this request by the Eastern Band of the Cherokee to name Jackson County, to designate who it is named for by the individual honored, to change the name of the individual honored by the name of Jackson County, Chief Walter Jackson, who was born and raised in our community, and as Chief Sneed has said, served his people so well.
Thank you. If I may respond, I appreciate your comments. And I think what's important to note in the day and age in which we live, you were correct. There were decisions that were made, not just for the Cherokees, but for all tribal nations. The federal government's policy of a guardian-ward relationship, and specifically if you look at the language of Chief Justice John Marshall in his decision in the Cherokee v. Georgia 1831 case, He literally said they, speaking of the Cherokees, are like little children who look to the government to care for their needs, and we are the guardian and they are a ward of the government. I remember the first time I read that, I can't even express how offended I was when I read that, and it takes quite a bit to offend me. If you're in public office, you got to have pretty thick skin. So I was offended because I thought, my ancestors were here for thousands of years prior to European contact. To suggest that because another group of people came to this land and they had technology that the indigenous people didn't have, it somehow made them superior in a mindset and an ideology that they thought made them superior, was highly offensive. Although I will say now, I think what's important is we're in a place now where I think we understand collectively that we are human beings first and foremost, and that we are all in this together, and that it is impossible to change the past. It's history, and history is complicated. And I will also say that there's not a people group in the history of humanity that has perfectly clean hands. They don't exist. But I think that we have evolved to a place now where we recognize our collective humanity and the need to work together. And I can say that in the role of Principal Chief, my commitment has been to build strong relationships with the surrounding counties. I was very pleased when the Southwestern Commission changed their bylaws to include the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians. I actually sit on the board of directors now.
Yes.
We have a great relationship with all the surrounding counties. We recognize that what happens to one member of the region happens to the region, and so it's refreshing, it's heartwarming, and it's a move in the right direction to not see ourselves divided by lines on a map or by names we are designated by race, but instead as human beings, and we're all in this struggle together. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments and presentation.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, do you have a report today?
I will just simply state, as many of you know, and for those that don't know, I am at home today. Let me turn my camera on so you can see me. I'm remoting in remotely because unfortunately I contracted COVID and am in isolation. And I just wanted to say today during my report, I know I continually monitor the health department statistics on the dashboard and monitor the CDC statistics. And while we are slowly increasing in our vaccination rate, I think we're at 53% of our population is vaccinated. 60% have at least received one shot at this point. So we are moving in the right direction. I would encourage everyone to get vaccinated. It's very important. Thankfully, I have had very few symptoms. Very, very mild, very few symptoms. I have fared very well. My family's fared very well. And I attribute that to the fact that I have been vaccinated. I spoke this week with a good friend of mine who works in a hospital in Atlanta. And she was telling me that she has watched 10 people die the other night from COVID. And they were all unvaccinated. And most of them range between 20s and 30s. It is really running rampant right now among young people in this nation. And I would just very much encourage people to get vaccinated. I also had a conversation with a gentleman who is an anesthesiologist in Eastern North Carolina. Likewise, he has seen a huge number of COVID cases. And just like our local hospital, everyone in intensive care on a ventilator is unvaccinated. It is critical. We are overwhelming our healthcare facilities, and we must continue to spread the word and encourage everyone to get vaccinated. So that would be my simple statement today. I have no official report, but just to report that I am doing well. I'll be back next week, and I encourage people to get vaccinated.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Woody?
Yes, and I would kind of piggybacking on what Chairman McMahon said. I have been so thankful that our school board ordered masks, had the mask mandate from the start of school. We have had cases of students and teachers and staff who have contracted COVID, but we have much less contact infections than some of the other counties around us. And I want to applaud the Board of Education for taking that step. It's difficult to do that, but I think they did the right thing, and I think the results have proven that out. And then just one last thing, I've been in touch with Commissioner Tommy Long from Haywood County. And he has been so gratified with the amount of support, monetarily, physical labor, staff, and equipment that has come from Jackson County to help alleviate the conditions. He did say it's going to be a long road to recovery. It's not a short thing, but he is so pleased with the support that they've gotten from our community.
Thank you. Just kind of to piggyback on what Chairman McMahon and Commissioner Woody said, starting in October, every Tuesday from 2 to 6, our health department will be giving flu shots. And so beside, the vaccine and the virus, that's so important to keep that flu season right around the corner in mind. And every Saturday in October, 9 to 11, they'll be also doing the flu shots. And the cost is $45 for the, if I can say this right, quadrivalent, and then there's a higher potent for 65 and older citizens. I encourage you to please consider that flu shot just as important as the COVID shot.
And insurance does pay for that.
Yes, it does.
And Medicare.
Yes, you're exactly right. Thank you. County manager report, Mr. Adams?
I think if I can get a motion for the minute.
Oh, yes. All right. We have been presented with a motion of the minutes of the 21st and the 7th.
I move that we accept those minutes as presented.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Commissioners, Mr. Chairman, I hope everybody's doing well. A shorter report today, but I do have some good news. But to start off the report, you have your standard zoning and building permits report. Why would I read glasses with a mask on? This is your standard monthly report that's provided. And as you can see, the planning department issued 3 commercial zoning permits and 1 renovation addition permit for the month of August. And code enforcement issued 6 commercial permits and 2 renovation addition permits for the month of August. Put that down. I'm fogging up my glasses. I can't read. Going on down and construction projects, our animal rescue center is 26% complete. I'm gonna go ahead and scroll to the attachments. It's 26% complete. Rain has caused significant delays, but here recently they have been able to go out and start the major retaining walls out there. So I did provide you the latest architectural report to show you that they are basically now moving towards building the retaining wall on the backside of the facility itself. We are starting to proceed forward with the walking paths and also building out the dog park area. The facility is still scheduled, or the metal building is still scheduled to show up in October and November. So hopefully by Christmas, we'll start seeing vertical build out there. The next item is request for qualifications for the architectural services related to the Justice Administration Center have been issued and received. Jackson County has received 6 sets qualifications. I've included those in the packet. So you can see it's Clark Nexon, Cope Architecture, Carey Design, Walter Robbs, and Mosley Architects, and McMillan, Patterson, and Smith. In the next month or so, we'll be reviewing those and going through, and hopefully by October or maybe November, a recommendation will be able to come back to the board. And just remember, this is for planning services only. The next major item that was in the capital improvements plan is really the need for additional court space here, but we'll also look at the space needs of the facility itself. And the next item is really good news. I did receive notification from Dogwood Health Trust that, and you do see the congratulations letter here, but I'm going to scroll back to my manager summary. Give me 1 second. Give you a little bit. The Health Trust has awarded Jackson County the $2,174,497.50 to be used for the planning of the homeless shelter and the construction of a domestic violence shelter. Attachment 3 is just the email notification from Dogwood Health Trust. Jackson County will be receiving a grant agreement from the Health Trust in the next couple of weeks. Just a reminder of the budget itself. The total proposed budget was $4,348,995. Out of that, 50% was to come from Dogwood, 50% from our ARPA funds. The majority of those funds are for the planning and construction of the Center for Domestic Peace, Domestic Violence Shelter. And then there is the $125,000 in there for the planning of the homeless shelter itself. Just a reminder, we must wait for the final American Rescue Plan Act rules to be released and before we can proceed forward with anything. And I also want to remind everybody, if you recall, when we first talked about this, either one of these projects, the construction project, is a 3-year timeline. So the upcoming events for this project is, first of all, we've got to get the final rules of ARPA funds, and we need to verify everything to proceed forward as is. We do have to go through a process of hiring an architect, very similar to what I just described to you for this facility. And then in the next 8 to 12 months, there has to be a planning process in regards to the actual schematics of the facility itself. It'll take another 8 to 12 months after that to put together construction documents and bid documents. And then it'll take at least another year for construction itself. So just trying to let everybody know it's great news, but unfortunately, it does take time for us to work. It's not happening tomorrow. But it is great news, and I appreciate everybody that worked on this, the people at the CDP, the HERE staff, and then also Southwestern Commission. They put a lot of time and effort into this grant application.
I would like to thank you, Manager Adams, for really pushing ahead on this in a short time frame and bringing those partners together. It's great to be able to access this amount of money. I did have one question, and maybe you all told us this, but I forgot. In the planning for here, is that using the possibility of using that evergreen building? Or is it just planning in general for a homeless shelter?
Well, I think it could be both.
Oh, okay.
Because,
Good.
and why I say both is because as we went through that process, there was questions that were being generated to me from commissioners, either individually and or in our open session. Things like, who owns the facility? How's it going to operate? What are the annual cost of operation? These are things that when you start talking about planning for the homeless shelter, it really becomes, it's a little bit more complicated than this, but really two primary areas of planning or study, if you want to call it that. One is really operational in the sense of really going through and trying to come up with a plan of operation. Is this going to be an open shelter that has cots in the middle of it? Do you have individual? There's a lot of things that you've got to go through and discuss. Now, several of these questions are related to the facility that you may or may not have access to.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, I do think there needs to be more discussions in regards to just how a homeless shelter would actually operate. Is it a 24/7? How is it manned? What's the annual cost? Those are the things that I believe I was being asked or generally being discussed. Then the second part of that $125,000 would be So there's a whole facilitation process that needs to take place in regards to that discussion.
Okay.
But then there is a second part, and that really is an architectural discussion. And I don't want to make it sound like these have to run separately. They can run congruently, these two processes. And that's really bringing in a facility designer. You do this a lot with a lot of facilities. Like for this facility, it's going to be about square footage discussion. When I say this facility, I mean the Justice Center. It's really going to be about square footage discussions before we really even get into what I call flow of operations and things of that nature. That's what really needs to happen for with an architect up front for here also.
Okay.
And so then at some point you would then, once those issues are settled, you would then have to follow through and start trying to come up with more concrete numbers of what the cost of not only operations would be, but facility cost, construction.
Well, and that makes sense.
It's-
Because you want your programming to drive your facilities so that they fit and work together.
It's similar, those of you who went through the indoor pool conversation, if you went back and when we had those conversations, we had a location conversation. If you recall, we did a community survey, we did all of those things. But then we also went through and had a conversation about what is needed in the indoor pool,
Right.
right? And then once you had that general information, you were able to start using an architect to start coming up with some numbers. And at that point, we also, if you recall, we used the architect to come up with operational costs of that facility.
Oh, yes.
So when that information was provided to the public before it went out to referendum, not only construction costs were provided to the public, we also provided operational costs to the public. And so not exactly the same process, but a similar process. At the end of the day, we should be able to talk about what type of homeless shelter, how's it going to be ran, what's the square footage, what's the cost to build, and what's the cost to operate.
Okay.
And all the same questions and answers for the domestic, Center for Domestic Peace.
Yes. Yeah, and there is a little bit difference there in the sense that you recall that yes, we'll go through that whole planning side. Now, when you start talking about the ongoing costs, we will come out with all of that, but just a reminder, there are other state funds and so forth that are really waiting for the CDP to get into a position to ask for them to help with operational. So that is a little bit different than where here was in these conversations.
Anything else?
No, sir.
All right. Anybody signed up for informal comments from the public?
No, sir.
No one signed up on that.
Okay. They're taking care of Chief Steve because he had another meeting to go to, so we'll go on to 1A, our finance report. Ms. Fox?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'll go over the highlights for the month of August. The general fund revenues collected to date, $17,398,133. That's 24.09% of budget. Of that amount, we've got $6,255,776 at accounts receivables that will be applied to last fiscal year. The general fund expenditures collected to date is $11,051,986. That's 16.48% of budget. At this point, the revenues are $6,346,147 more than the expenditures. The ad valorem taxes collected, $10,611,532. That's 28.88% of budget. The motor vehicle taxes collected, $302,739. That's 20.61% of budget. The prior year taxes collected, it's $118,096. That's 13.12% of budget. We received a sales and use tax distribution for the month. It was $1,723,345. That was representing May sales. That amounts $470,583 or 37.56% more than we received last August.
Oh, my goodness.
So it continues to be at a high level.
I know. I thought last month was kind of a peak, July.
Yeah.
Is there any part of our economy that is driving that high percent? That you can engage?
Well, you've got the sales tax on building materials.
Oh,
You've got a high building right
Yes.
now. Deliveries, it's online sales, it's ordered, that's delivered to the county.
Oh,
You've got increased occupancy tax that drives it too.
Yeah.
We're just seeing it from all different.
And I think, I was gonna say too, we have to remember, we had several federal stimulus plans, and people got those monies and they spent them, and that's the result of the sales tax increase too. People taking those stimulus checks, several thousands of dollars in some cases, and spending them. So it helps stimulate the economy.
that's a good point, yes.
It has. The landfill disposal fees collected for $476,656. That's 21.63% of budget. And the prior landfill disposal fees, $12,290. That's 22.35% budget. The growth revenues, we're still seeing a large increase in environmental health and register deeds. Code enforcement plan is pretty much where they should be at this time of the year. Of course, we did budget additional revenues too. And the general fund contingency at the end of August was $1,675,498. Would you like to answer any questions on the report?
moving on to any questions for Ms. Fox?
I'm glad you do these numbers, not me.
Moving to item 2, budget ordinance amendment. Ms. Fox?
Got two budget ordinance amendments for your consideration. The first one is for $29,033. That's for an insurance settlement and Duke Energy incentives that was on the on the community service bill that we had applied for during construction.
Oh,
So that's the credit we got back
Yes.
when we
Thank
went
you.
through that plan. that-
Yes.
As the board requested us to do energy saving plan for that facility. We followed the Duke plan that was approved by them, and they gave us incentives in regards to that.
great. Thank you.
The second amendment is for health department. It's a total of $481,163. And all of these funds are related to COVID and vaccines. There is a grant from Dogwood Health Trust of $101,000 and state revenues of $335,455. And then receipts that they expect to collect $44,708.
Any questions on those 2 amendments, Ms. Fox?
So this ELC enhancing detection, that's the wastewater, is that correct? No,
No, the COVID wastewater surveillance is bad. This
that's,
is,
okay, that's what I mean. Yeah. Okay, and that's paid for by the grant,
yes,
yes, thank you.
Any questions? Thank you, Ms. Fox.
thank you.
Ms. Brandy Henson on our next item, tax collectors and refund reports for August.
Afternoon. Okay, for the month of August, the 2021 taxes collected were $10,999,869. The delinquent taxes collected were $60,555. The total deposited for August was $11,742,179.66. Also for the month, there were refunds of $4,450.88. overpayment refunds of $7,166.22 and releases of $7,842.81. Questions?
Questions from the citizens?
Thank
Thank
you.
you. We have heard the 3 items on our consent agenda. Entertain a motion to approve.
I move that we approve those items as presented.
Second. Any further discussion?
Commissioner Woody,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Stribley,
Yes.
Chairman McMahon.
Yes, motion carries.
Going down to new business. Mr. Elder's going,
He's zooming.
He's here.
okay, very good. Afternoon, Mr. Elders.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me, Mr. Jones. We have a request for a fireworks show Saturday, October 16th at Camp Marywood. It'll be on the dock on their lake there. I believe it's a wedding is the purpose of it. Spoken with Chief Dillard. He said they can cover the fire service for it, and it's a location we've had previous shows before. Just need commissioner's approval so I can issue the permit.
We have a motion to
I'll
approve.
say we make a motion.
I'll second. Get out of the routine.
Commissioner Stribley,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Woody,
Yes.
Chairman McMahon.
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 5, Ms. Lorna Taylor, on our transit capital projects program grants resolution.
The only thing I need to add to what I told you earlier about these grants is that they are 2 separate grants. One of them is the 5311 program grant, which covers the administrative cost. And the second one is the 5310 elderly and disabled program grant. And that supports the operating costs for elderly and disabled transportation. And since they are 2 separate grants, per DOT regulations, they do need to be voted on separately.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a motion to approve the 5310 capital project program grant.
I move that we approve Transit 5310 as stated in the,
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? Questions? Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Woody,
yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Stribley,
Yes.
Chairman McMahon.
Yes, motion carries.
All right, moving on to the Transit 5311 grant. Will be the pleasure of the board.
I'll make a motion. That's 5310 program.
I'll second. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Stribley,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Woody,
Yes.
Chairman McMahon.
Yes, motion carries.
Moving on down to our agenda, Mr. Poston, close out of the CDBG grant.
Yes, sir. At this point, we just need to submit the required paperwork and close out the grant. That would also require the chairman's signature. So just an approval from the board to allow us to move forward with the closeout and obtain the chairman's signature to do so.
You don't want to read it again?
I can if you need me to.
I'll make a motion right quick to close it out.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Woody,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Stribley,
Yes.
Chairman McMahon.
Yes, motion carries.
All right. Item number 7, Unified Development Ordinance Amendment to set a public hearing, and it's been suggested November 2nd, 5:55 PM. Is that correct?
That's correct. And again, those are the amendments that we talked about at the work session, 160D and associated amendments. Please the board to set that public hearing. That'd be great.
Pleasure of the board.
I'd like to make a motion to make this unified development ordinance pass.
November 2nd, 5:55. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Questions from Mr. Poston? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Commissioner Woody,
Yes.
Chairman McAfee.
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Mr. Adams, update on our item 9, Fairview Press Box concessions and restrooms construction project.
Are we on 8 or not?
I'm sorry, 8, I'm sorry. Which would be the Urban Plan Institute project.
Yes, sir. So what you do have enclosed in your packets and you see up on the screen here is the Cashier's Area of Chamber of Commerce did provide some additional information in regards to this. And basically, it really is trying to describe the process itself. If you scroll down, ultimately, the cost of this advisory services panel is $135,000, in which they are going through a fundraising effort. Commissioner Jones, I believe the last time, if they're around 92,000 at
Yes,
this
sir.
point.
About 4 or 5 days ago now.
About 4 or 5 days ago, I
Wow.
believe, in their effort, they've raised around $92,000. I think one of the questions that comes is this something that the county wishes to participate into financially? And so ultimately, just give a little bit of background about what the community and where they're at in the planning process. Jackson County did pay for and create a small area plan back in 2019 that was passed by all levels of planning boards and the county commissioners. And so ultimately, that area plan is one of the resources utilized by the planning council to make not only current decisions, but future decisions. Now, there are currently things occurring in Cashers, and I know Mark, Commissioner Jones can elaborate on this, but currently right now, as in all over the county, growth is really just going crazy, for lack of better terms, in the Cashers area. And it's driven the planning council to basically start having conversations about whether or not their current land use regulations basically are enough to provide for managed growth. And they meaning the planning council, the community, county staff, our planning director, our attorney, they've been in multiple conversations for several meetings and I don't know how many hours. And so they'll continue to have these conversations. And eventually where it will evolve to is there will be recommendations that will come from the planning council in regards to how to proceed forward as far as updating land use regulations. So that is coming. More than likely that will be sometime coming up in the next budget year. And just remember, our budget process starts in January. So we're only a few months away from truly starting these conversations. So as they proceeded forward, I know chamber members, and of course we had presentations that came to this board previously, basically have gone out and sought the assistance of ULI, this professional group, provide additional information to the planning council and to the community as they proceed forward. And so from that standpoint, I can tell you as a manager standing here, I think information is always good when a planning council and a community is trying to move forward in regards to making these types of recommendations. And just remember, when they make recommendations for updates to the land use regulations, eventually it'll go through planning council, planning board, and eventually to the county commissioners. So again, not only more information for them, but potentially more information to you as a board. So I do think that there is value, obviously, with this process that the chamber is going through, and then there's potentially value for the county being a participant or a partner. I wouldn't necessarily say that we would want to be a primary funder in this conversation, because ultimately, I believe we're just wanting to try to utilize the information long-term and then basically be a participant, meaning, if you recall, they're going to interview stakeholders in the community. I think it's been offered to this board and to a lot of other folks in that community. If you have people you wish to have interviewed, please provide the chamber a list of people to be interviewed. So I do think there is value for us to be a partner in this conversation. I have encouraged the chamber to have an open to have a transparent and have a process that can be trusted by the community and eventually by you all as a board. And the chamber does feel comfortable that ULI will create a product that's neutral, professional, and provide good information. So having said all that, I do believe there is justification for the county to be a partner in this, just not necessarily a primary partner. And that's where staff is.
I agree with everything you said. Now, going back to our last meeting, Mr. Poston gave us some census data. Cashier's population grew by 25%.
Yes,
Over the last 10 years. And Hamburg, Linville community grew 18% compared to 7% of the county that those numbers are fitted in. So there is tremendous growth and there's needs to have additional information for us to give guidance to the future.
Mr. Moderator, I would make a motion that we grant $5,000 towards this endeavor.
I second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I would just like to say, I have to admit, I was a little hesitant at first, thinking that we'd already had, our small area plan, et cetera. But then in talking to Commissioner Jones and the Stephanie at the Chamber of Commerce and Cashiers, I realized that study was based on old, the information at that time. And like you mentioned, with this growth that's just amazing right now, we do need an updated plan. So I'm in favor.
So I would request or just add an additional statement. There is desire from staff, our attorney, and for our planning director to basically just have access to the contract and make sure that we're comfortable with the contract that the chamber is signing with ULI. And the main purpose of that conversation is to just, our whole desire is for a product to be produced that's usable, that's trusted by the community as a whole. And so that, I think when this idea was brought up, initially, I think Stephanie welcomed us reviewing their contract completely, and that's not what we're asking for.
Correct, and she has sent it to me.
Yeah.
And I'll be able to, to add in a couple things that county manager Adams is talking about and make sure it's a transparent process and that it's available for us to use for our process down the road.
So it's
So
just,
that planning director posting can use it, and okay, great.
Will Mr. Poston review it as well? Comments?
so I just wanted to throw that out,
Oh, that's good.
that's something where staff, again, we're a partner, we're not the primary driver of this, but we're also trying to participate to make sure that we all want this to be a usable document that's beneficial to all of us at the end of this. So that's our whole goal.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussions or questions? Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Wood,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Sturman,
Yes.
Chairman McNamara.
Yes, motion carries.
Now we'll go on to number 9, the Fairview Press Box Concession and Restroom Construction Project.
Yes, sir. So we have gone through the process of creating bid specs. We did go out to bid, and we did open our bids for the Fairview Press Box Concession and Restroom Construction Project. So I have several items enclosed in your packets. The first is a letter from Clark Nexon, our architect for this project. And then ultimately, basically what he's doing is providing the information certifying the bids that were enclosed in the packets. Hard to see, you have to flip your page sideways in your book. I've got it straight up there. The parent low bidder or the low bidder is Owl Construction. The bid price came in for the base bid of $675,000. We are also looking to potentially upgrade the water line that feeds that facility. And so we did add an alternate in for $62,715 for a total project cost of $737,715. And so we did have a legitimate bid process. This is considered We had to go through a formal bidding process because anything over $500,000, you have to advertise, come in, they get bid bonds, they're gonna have performance bonds and see, like, although this does feel kind of high for a concession stand and press box, I also just got to make sure, remind everybody that the process we have to go through to build such things is just not the same as just a private person talking to another private person. There are costs added to these construction costs that are just not there between two private individuals. Again, performance bonds, insurance requirements, bid bonds, all of these things have been certified. So when you get that letter at the front here from the architect, they're basically certifying that all the laws have been fulfilled. As you can see, we did receive a bid from Western Builders, and then the final bid we received from Buchanan and Sons, and you can just go through and review those. You can see the Buchanan and Sons was over $1 million. And so a couple of things that we're looking to do is if you will go to your next, I guess it really in your books, it'll be just the next pages. Online, it's the next tab. Couple of things in here I just wanted to point out is that what we're asking for, what I'm asking for is you'll see a proposed budget amendment for an amount of $773,850. If you scroll down to the next page or go to the next page, that basically is $675,000 for the base bid, $62,715 for the water line. And I'm looking to have about 5% contingency for the project itself. So that's just trying to show you why that's a higher budget amendment amount than what we just talked about the bids, is I'm trying to add the contingency in there. I can tell you right now, the contractor is willing to hold off. We can hold off actually exercising the alternate bid of $62,715. See, there were some unknowns out there during the bidding process that sometimes may drive up these costs, these conversations. So we're currently going to go out there and have county staff and school staff go take a look at some things. We're also going to do some more testing on the existing water line that's coming there. The main issue is with the existing water line, we're putting in commercial flush valves for both the toilet and the urinals and so forth. And so you just got to have enough pressure for those to correctly work. And so we're going to run testing there. We're also going to have staff look at that. So although we are asking that the board follow through with the budget amendment to allocate this amount of funds, we're going to attempt to reduce the 62 down, especially if we can do some of the work ourselves and or maintain the existing line. The main thing is we just got to make sure that, you know, as you got all this tore up and we invest these dollars in there, we got to make sure we have that adequate water supply there. Last thing we want to do is put $750,000 into a building and then not have adequate water. So contingency, obviously, we do have things built in, just so you know that, you know, we have quantities built in for potential rock and potential things. So, you know, hopefully we won't have to use a contingency either, but I'm just trying to prepare for whatever we need to deal with when this moves forward. So a couple of things that we did go through this entire process. We did have the school involved with us, just so you know, but the county really led the process as far as hiring an architect, going out to bid and so forth. But at the end of the day, this is school property.
Yes.
Now, we lease the property, which enables us to go in and do modifications and so forth. But it will really require not only approval from this board, but it has also been put on the Board of Education's agenda for the 28th, I believe, is that correct? For them to go through and approve it. And I believe how we're looking to set this up is that what is being requested from this board today is, first things first, is if you wish to proceed forward, is that we would ask you to pass the budget amendment to let you know, and this monies would come out of the Conservation Preservation Recreation Fund. And currently we have $1.789 million. That's technically $1,789,076.47, according to our finance officer. And so we do have the funds available. Obviously, what this would do is if you proceed forward, this potentially takes that fund down to having about $1 million available to it. This does matter to some other conversations that are occurring with the board, but I do believe this does leave enough monies in that fund to continue forward with the other conversations that have been occurring in closed session and so forth. And so what would be requested is that the board vote to approve this budget amendment and then vote to award the contract to Al, and then vote, and then within that vote, authorize myself to sign off on any contract documents with the approval and oversight of the county attorney. That everything we need? So, having said that, turn it back over to the board for discussion.
Commissioner Wood?
I do have one question. We had some discussion with Mr. Buchanan, Chief Deputy Superintendent of the Board of Ed, and about the possibility of making that one field into a softball field for the high school. Does this have impact on that? Do you know?
The only thing we're doing, well, first of all, they'll improve when you say, that's the reason I want to say, this is a press box and
Yes.
concession stand
Yes.
and set of bathrooms. It is
And
2
bathrooms.
stories. If you're familiar with the area, that press box actually covers 2 fields. So
Oh,
it would
yes.
cover those fields. Now, what
Okay.
we're also doing in this, what's in this bid is we're upgrading the electrical panels, and we're going ahead and putting everything conduit underground, getting past the pavement area, so that even when we ever proceed forward with upgrading and fixing the lighting on those fields,
Okay,
then ultimately we're there. We don't
Okay.
have to come back and rip anything up. And so we were trying to look in the future there.
Yes.
Now, beyond that, there is no other
okay,
modification for the softball field.
thank you.
Can you make a motion that you include all 3 items, or we need to take it individually?
I think you would need to do the budget amendment individually, and then I think you could, it's up to you, but I think you could award the contract and authorize me to sign off on contracts in one motion. But I do think the budget amendment needs to be
Well,
signed.
we'll take the budget ordinance amendment first.
Mr. Moderator, I'll make a motion that we approve the budget ordinance amendment in the amount of $773,850.
I'll second.
Any further questions or discussion? Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Strickland,
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Woody,
Yes,
Chairman McNamara.
Yes, motion carries.
I'll make a motion to allow Manager Adams to sign the contract documents as needed, and we'll do award Al Construction the contract.
second,
Motion second, any further comments or discussions?
Commissioner Woody,
yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Strickland,
Yes.
Chairman McNamara.
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Item number 10, amendment to Architect Services Agreement, Ms. Baker.
Yes, this is the amendment you saw at your work session last Tuesday. This will allow McMillan, Paslin, and Smith as architect to oversee projects, and this will, more importantly, this will end the 2000 contract with John Court.
I know this is very detailed on our work session. Any questions for Ms. Baker? Take a motion to approve the amendment as presented.
I move that we approve this amendment as presented.
Yes, second. Any other questions?
Yes.
Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Woody,
Yes.
Chairman McNamara.
Yes, motion carries.
All right, Ms. Baker, we'll go on to item 11, our Sky-Fi Incorporated lease, resolution 2130.
Yes, I believe it was 2 meetings ago, at least 2 meetings. It may have been 3 meetings ago that Mr. Travis Lewis came and spoke to you about renewing the lease for his tower for Sky-Fi on Kings Mountain. And we had to wait until this time because it does require 30 days notice. And so that 30 days notice was published in the paper. Does not require a public hearing, but it does give opportunity for folks to come and give comment to you in that time. And of course, we haven't had any. So if approved today, this would be the lease that everyone would sign. So you would be moving, and I'll show you the resolution in just a moment, but approving the resolution to lease this property to Sky-Fi and Travis Lewis for a term, I probably got it right by it, but for a term of 5 years with another option right here for a 5-year renewal at the end of that term. And under the same terms that he's currently leasing, which I believe is $3 per customer he pays to the county. And I'll go ahead and pull the resolution up here.
And as chairman of the airport authority, I'll just add that it's been a successful endeavor between the airport authority's revenue generator and the services it provides to citizens.
Good Sky-Fi.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So what we'd be looking for is approval of resolution R2130.
I'll make that motion to approve resolution 2130, Sky-Fi lease.
I'll second.
Any further comments or questions from Ms. Baker? Clerk?
Mr. Woody,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Chairman McNamee.
Yes, motion carries.
And this last item, Commissioner Jones, but I will let Major Queen, he is back here, come and present this one instead of me. I was going to fill in for him, but he's here, so you get the real deal.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is the grant I'll always like to talk to y'all about every year because it's $25,000. It used to be 20, but there's zero match. So it's always, I'm disappointed Commissioner Deeds isn't here because he's usually my biggest proponent of hearing about this free money that comes from the government back to the county. So, but what this is I sit on a board across the state for highway safety, and this money helps pay for that travel. It also helps pay for our air cards in our cars that we use to connect to back to the office when we're in the field. So that's where the money comes from, and that's where it goes. And it just requires, this grant requires a resolution be passed by the board. Ms. Fox has the actual grant paperwork on her desk, working towards the signatures as this resolution gets signed. So it's pretty easy grant every year we get to do with the Governor's Highway Safety Program.
Thanks, Major Queen. Yes. Pleasure of the board.
I'd like to make a motion to approve this.
Motion, second.
Second.
Questions for Major Queen?
No, just thank you for making the extra effort to acquire this money and to use it for our citizens. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mr. Woody,
Yes,
Chairman McNamee.
Yes, motion carries.
Thank y'all. Have a good afternoon.
thank you.
That ends our items on the agenda. Do we have any questions from the press?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Thank you. And I believe we have a closed session item.
Yes, sir, we do under General Statute 143-318-11A5, real property.
All right, a motion to go out of our public meeting and go into a closed session.
So move.
I'll second. Oh, Brian second. Okay, very good.
The
Okay,
voice from outer space.
all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
We'll give the folks a little time to. Yeah, thank you.
Well, Josh.